Welcome to another episode of In This Corner, and very awesome episode. Special one to me because it's not often that you get to interview one of your favorite fighters of all time. So I'm excited about that. This guy, I'm gonna give you a quick intro and we'll jump right in. 12-year veteran of MMA between WEC, UFC, Legacy, 2-1 and bare knuckle fighting championship. This is a guy that racked up a lot of fight of the night, 6 fight of the nights between UFC and WEC, and then fight of the year in 2010 against the Korean Zombie. It is the one and only Leonard Bad Boy Garcia. Leonard, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Cyrus?
Man, it's my pleasure to be interviewing you, bro. You're a guy that I've really enjoyed watching over the years. Definitely my favorite in the WEC days. So it's great to talk to you, man. Are you in Texas now? Is that where you're at now?
Yes, sir. Plainview, Texas.
Texas born and bred, huh?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're gonna bounce around, man. I want to talk about the fight right over here. Obviously, you and Zombie, one of the best fights ever. But we're gonna bounce around and just talk a little bit about everything. But I would love to get a little bit on your background because you have a very, very interesting story. I mean, even from birth, right? Like things were a little crazy at your birth. Some issues with your lungs. Run through that because I saw some of it on the Wikipedia, but kind of give me a little background on that.
So I was born very early. I think it was 2.5 months early. So my lungs weren't fully developed, or I wasn't ready to come completely out.
Yeah.
And I had to take certain injections into my lung. Into the lung tissue. I stayed in the tube. I think I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
And I was eating tiny, all the things that the premature babies go through. And, I had a lot of problems, man. I would, get fevers really bad. My grandparents adopted me when I was 3 days old. So my mom was young. She was 17 at the time. 42 years ago, 17 was like a 12-year-old having a baby now.
That's true.
They adopted me. My grandmother took care of me, for the 5 months that I was in the hospital and made sure that I made it out of there alive. And it was a struggle from what I understand. Of course, I don't remember, but they would tell me stories that I would throw up and like blister the skin on whoever was holding me because of how the temperatures that I'd reach. But my lungs actually came back and saved my life later on. So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that for sure. And while we're talking about your background here, and it's so interesting that you were kind of a survivor from the get-go, which kind of goes in to when you're a fighter, when this is what you do for a living, like to kind of have that survivor mentality is pretty huge, right? So that's actually something that's kind of worked well for you in your career, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I tell everybody my ambitions far exceeded my talents, but I never let the two cross paths. You know what I mean? It was just like I had to go and I wanted to get somewhere, and I just was going to fight all the way till I got there.
No doubt. So what was childhood like for you, man? Obviously played a lot of football, which is a Texas thing for sure. I'm sure Plainview that's pretty known for that. What was childhood like for you, and what do you think maybe happened in your childhood that kind of moved you towards the occupation that you had for so long?
So my grandparents were older, okay, and very strict. I was a country boy. As soon as I could pick up a shovel, they had me digging. It was just anything I had to do. I mean, I would, feed the cows, pigs, horses, clean out stalls, catching chickens to kill them, working in the garden.
Yeah.
That was my childhood. And then as we got older, of course, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, so he had lots of things going on. He had a trucking business. We owned a convenience store. He owned a trailer park. So I had my hands in everything. Like he made me work every step of the way. And they were, I tell them I'm so tough because of the beatings I took as a child. I was a hard-headed kid, always wanted to do things my own way. And I mean, if child abuse was a thing back then, I definitely got some of that.
Yeah, man.
But it,
Obviously,
it
a
worked
different
out.
day. Yeah, right. I mean, it was just a different day and time, and now you have kids now. I have kids. Things are so much different, and
Different.
I was always told by my parents that I didn't get enough beatings. So,
That's
so
yeah. I heard that too. I beg to differ, but they said what's funny is I I have a hard time disciplining my kids because of that.
yeah,
Um, and it's just like my wife gets mad at me because I won't spank the girls, and she's like, help me out here. What are
yeah.
we doing? And I'm like, man, it's just one of those things, man. And I mean, of course, everything stems from your childhood, man. So it's one of those crazy deals. But I'm stern, but I just, man, as far as discipline goes, spanking, I can't do it. And then nowadays you get in trouble for it, so it works out.
Yeah. No, we don't do much of that either.
Yeah.
And my kids kind of take advantage of it, but that's beside the point. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, really, we could go into that for an hour, so I don't want to do that.
No doubt, no doubt. So obviously, so let's get to where those injections probably saved your life. So you have this situation. So you're playing football, and it says under Wikipedia you could have walked on to Texas Tech. Maybe you had plans to walk on
So
to Tech.
So I was thought I was a fairly decent football player in high school. I played for Plainview until my sophomore year, and then beginning of my sophomore year, I got transferred to Lubbock High.
Okay.
And then I wasn't able to play my sophomore year because of the transfer, and then my junior and senior year I played. So Texas Tech had a walk-on program, and I tried to walk onto the team. During that time, that's the spring, or right before spring football started, they had the walk-on program, and it was doing my best. Of course, I was 5'10",
Yeah.
160 pounds. I had the athletic ability, and probably had the heart for it, but college football is a different animal, man.
Yeah.
It's
Especially
just,
at Texas Tech.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's a D1 school, and it was just, it was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow, but I ended up making some pretty good friends, and was always working out. Um, so I ended up going out with the guys one night, and we end up, we go out to a night of dancing, and then we end up at a Taco Cabana at about 2 a.m. And I walk in there, and back then, or it's still the same way now, they give you a tray of food. You kind of walk back to your table. Well, I'm walking back to the table, and there's these lines, to keep everybody in uniform
yeah.
to where they're going in and out. So I'm walking through the line, and I walk up to this guy who's just standing there, like standing in the middle of the line. He's just staring into space. And I'm like, which way you going? You going left, you going right? He stares right at me, and he just reaches up and grabs a handful of my nachos. Doesn't eat them though. He just smears them on his face.
Oh no.
And I was like, yeah. So I'm kind of like, I'm dumbfounded by the whole thing. He's got beans, cheese, a little bit of chip.
No,
Then
that's
he
crazy.
goes in for the second helping to smear himself again. So I drop it and I punch him. Well, I didn't know this, but the whole time he had a knife in his hand in the other hand. Of course, my tray was up in the way, so I couldn't see. I guess him and his brother had done LSD. Um, and
Wow.
he had no idea what was going on. And his claim was that he didn't know what had happened. During the fight, we had a pretty good little scuffle. We scuffled for about 2 to 3 minutes, and he stabbed me 8 times during that scuffle.
Wow.
I got lucky and broke his jaw at some point during the fight, so that kind of demobilized him for a second. And I had a knife stuck in my back. And I stand up, I look down, there's blood everywhere, and I'm starting to get this tunnel vision, and I'm breathing really weird, like I sound rattled.
Yeah.
Ambulance gets there, and I think the ambulance beat me up worse than the dude did, because it was like they strapped me to a gurney, picked, I remember that. I remember being strapped in by my head, body, everything. And then I imagine it was one of the chest tubes that caused me to pass out. He punctured both my lungs. So here's where my childhood thing helped me out.
Yeah.
So I guess my lung tissue was underdeveloped when I was born, so I had to take certain steroids for it, and it created a thicker lung tissue. Your lungs are paper thin,
Yeah.
and it created enough of it to where my lungs wouldn't fully collapse. They would like fold up, and it allowed me to continue to get air and stay alive. So it was kind of a blessing that it happened. When I was so young, and I was able to keep breathing very little, enough to stay alive. And I was told when I got out of the hospital that I would never be able to compete or do anything athletically due to lungs maybe hyperinflating or collapsing again.
Yeah.
And during my time there, I had met some people at Texas Tech. Clay Pittman was a professor there, and he was a jiu-jitsu instructor. He asked me to come in and start training jiu-jitsu, and I went in there. He had a 15-year-old Brazilian kid. Of course, I was 18 at the time, and that kid beat the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever he knows, I want to learn it, and that's kind of where it started.
Yeah.
Just went in there and started training jiu-jitsu, and I think I'd been training for 6 months. I came to my hometown here in Plainview because they were having, back then they were called shoot fights.
Yeah.
It wasn't called MMA. I went there to watch the fights. I'm sitting up there, and the promoter comes up. He's like, "Hey, are you Leonard?" I said, "Yes, sir." He was like, "Do you train jiu-jitsu?" I said, "I do." He said, "My main event dropped out. We're looking for somebody to jump in." He was
Come
like,
on.
"Yeah, what do you weigh?" And I was like 156 something. He was like, "Oh, that's perfect." He was like, would you get on a scale? And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I had to go back there, strip down, get on a scale, 156 pounds. So I took the fight in the main event. I got paid $500, and 98 was good money.
So that was your first pro fight.
That was my first pro fight.
And you just fell into it.
I mean, literally went, bought a ticket to go to the show, made $500. They bought me some shorts at Walmart, some red. They looked like Adidas shorts, but they only had 2 stripes instead of 3. And they bought me a mouthpiece that wasn't even. I didn't even get to mold it. I just kind of stuck it in my mouth.
Yeah, of course.
Went out there and won the fight with the guillotine choke. I was a left slap, because back then we could only do palm striking.
Yeah.
I call it a left slap. It was I beg to differ with Nate Diaz. I think I invented I'll call it
you invented the slap. Okay.
Yeah, but I can't take credit. Diaz and them got a great Stockton slap, so I'll give it to them. But
wow.
Yeah, that my first fight, and then
and then the bug bit you, right? I mean, that was it. I'm guessing after that.
I loved it. Yeah. I never turned back.
Yeah, that's man, what a story, dude. That's absolutely insanity. Just being a spectator, and before you know it, you're in the main event and you win the main. Man, you can't write a better movie, bro. Is somebody preparing a script for you yet? Like, I feel like somebody needs to be writing up a script for you, man.
I don't know, man. It's funny when I tell the story, because people are like, "That's how you got into it." I was like, "Yeah, that was it." I hadn't, I'd never done any training for it. Of course, I thought, pro football was going to be my choice. And then I went to a D1 school, and I realized, like, yeah, it's a different animal.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, man. And, obviously you kind of make your way through some of the regional scene. And then you end up in, what I consider one of the best runs, in my opinion, of a promotion with the WEC. I mean, there's just something about that organization. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. And funny story, I used to DJ at a club for years. And I remember it would come on Versus, and it would just be one of the random episodes. And I'd always have it on. And I had kind of been bit by the MMA bug at that point. And I would put it on, and we would just love it. But the owner of the club would be like, "Man, turn that off. You're going to make the people want to fight in here." They're like, "Please turn it off." But I remember just watching endless episodes of WEC. And it was just such a cool organization. You know what I mean? It seemed like everybody kind of had a chip on their shoulder. It was almost kind of like that college football feel. You know how everybody says that the pros, they're all about the money. But with WEC, it just seemed like everybody was fired up all the time. What was the atmosphere like with that show?
Exactly as you're saying.
Was that it? Yeah.
It was. I mean, you're right. Everybody had something to prove. We were called the JV of the UFC.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that. We didn't want that moniker. We wanted to be known as the most exciting fighters. Everybody was trying to make a name for themselves. It was like you could be friends with somebody and they'd tell you to fight, and you'd both be like, well, kind of shrug off the friendship and say, hey, we got to do what we got to do. And it was great, man. I really loved the WEC. When we got absorbed by the UFC, of course, it felt good, but I almost hated losing those blue gloves.
Sure. I don't blame you.
Nuts, man.
What about Reed Harris? What about him kind of running the show and stuff? What was that like? Obviously, he still has a big spot with the UFC, went right over there. Everybody seems to talk really, really well of Reed. What was your experience like with Reed?
Reed is something else, man. He was probably one of the best people to fight for. So I'll tell you a funny story. Sure. WC 1, the very first WEC, was in Lemoore, California. I, of course, live in Plainview, Texas. Reed offers me, I think, $500 to drive down there. So I drive down there. I take 2 other guys with me. All 3 of us fight on the card. During the fight, I threw a head kick, and when I came down on my foot, it felt funny. And I was like, well, something's wrong. But I wasn't sure what it was. And I was like limping around. And then the next day I couldn't walk. So they were carrying me. We drive all the way into Arizona, and our air conditioning goes out in the car. Man. So we're all sweating, but I'm sweating like extra. So then they're like, man, something's wrong with Leonard. So we pull in. I was like, man, I don't feel good. Let's go. Let's stop somewhere. That we stop at a little clinic there. And they send me to the emergency room. They tell me, I think your leg is broken. So I call Reed Harris, and I'm like, hey, man, we just left from there. I fought. I'm in Arizona, and I think my leg is broken. Reed gets on the phone with the hospital there, gives them the insurance, and takes care of everything, man.
Wow.
Get the cast put on my leg, sends me like money to get home. It's just a great experience, man. And I mean, I didn't know Reed we didn't know each other at all. It was like literally just fought for him, had a great fight, beat Victor Estrada in the first round. He was all excited, gave me a big old hug, and he was like, if you need anything, call. And I called, and he answered, and I think that was WC 1. So you can imagine, I imagine there was no money in it back then. And for him to go all out and put the insurance down, it told me a lot about who Reed was. Yeah. And man, when I got an opportunity to fight for him again in WC and sign a contract, I loved it. I knew I was where I needed to be.
Well, yeah, because you come across so many promoters, man, and a lot of the times it's more of a negative thing than a positive thing when you talk to guys, and one of the big things is the insurance thing and taking care of fighters when they get hurt, taking care of their gas, and just I'm sure you see it on the lower level. As an old dog now, you see it still happens to this day. So when you come across a good promoter, that they really stand out, right? They really stand out.
It makes sense, man. I know why Reed is where he is.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. So, obviously in that locker room at that time, you had yourself, you had Cowboy, Aldo, Pettis, Cruz. I mean, we could Pulver, obviously, Uriah, so many names. And a lot of them were lightweight guys, were lighter weight, featherweight, bantamweight. And at the time, people don't really realize that UFC wasn't doing anything with these weight classes. Yeah. If you wanted to watch you guys, then you had to switch over to WEC. And I will fully admit that even as a commentator, as a broadcaster to this day, if I go into a show and I see 7 bantamweight fights, and a featherweight fight or a flyweight fight, I'm like, man, it's gonna be a long night. I don't know about this. If I see a bunch of heavies, I'm like, all right, cool. You know, we might get, you know, 8 rounds between 6 fights. You know what I mean? How was it kind of changing everybody's mind? You know, that the lighter weights didn't have to be boring. You could still get knockouts. You could still get a lot of finishes. It wasn't going to decision every time. It had to be kind of a cool thing, having that chip on your shoulder, like proving everybody wrong. Like, hey, no, we are exciting. Like, people do want to watch us.
Yeah, that was it. It was you would get that feel in the locker room. Of course, when you would be back there with the heavyweight, you would see, you know, the heavyweights kind of methodical, slow moving, this and that. Our locker rooms back then looked like fights.
Yeah.
You know, the guys are warming up. You see fast movements. You see this. You see that. So it's like you would feed off that energy. You know, you would see it in the back all the way to the walk to the cage, and you had some. You got to be faster than that guy. You got to be better than that guy. You got to be more exciting. And I think we searched for finishes because of that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, you know, nobody wanted to go to a decision back then. And of course, you know, adapting to that okay, it's going to be a fast-paced fight. These guys are going to ding each other around, but it's going to go all 5 rounds. We wanted to end that. You know what I mean? We wanted to get rid of that, and I think we did a good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, you were one of those guys, no doubt about it, that was looking to finish all the time. And by the way, I was back there, I was looking at some of your pictures, and I'm like, I don't know if there's anybody out there in the whole world, other fighters that take as like passionate pictures, man. You're always like wide open, eyes wide open, like you're screaming every time you're throwing a punch, dude. Like, hopefully you have some of these pictures blown up in your house. Like, I would assume that you do, right?
Well, you know, man, I'm real weird about that. Like,
Really?
all my titles, everything, it's just like, man, I give them to my kids. But
Okay.
I tell everybody, I had so much fun fighting. Like, I loved it. And I've got a picture here of my very first fight in the WC, and I spotted the camera, and man, dude, I'm smiling just as big as can be, man. and it's funny because it's like, they're like, why would you smile in there? Was that like something to get at your opponent or anything? I was like, my opponent, that guy couldn't even see what I was doing. He's looking, his face is buried in my chest.
Yeah.
But for me, the excitement of it and the exhilaration and thrill of fighting just brought, it was like I was alive. I knew I belonged there. And it used to make me happy, man. And I think that was the thing. I think you had a locker room of guys who were happy to be there, and that makes a big difference, man. When you love your job, you do well at it.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I would agree with you on that. So you run into the Korean Zombie, and you welcome him into the organization, right? So let's just get into that, because, you know, like I said, fight of the year 2010, the Wrestling Observer called it the fight of the year. I think that was very well deserved. What did you know about him coming into that fight?
So Cub Swanson was originally going to fight the Korean Zombie. Yeah. Cub Swanson is training in Albuquerque, New Mexico with the Sarah Jacksons, and he's like, I need Leonard bad. You know, right when the fight camp started, and we're like, okay. You know, Cub's not normally always asking for certain people. Like, Cub, what's going on? He was like, Leonard, this guy is you in a Korean body. He's a little bit taller, but I mean, he just comes forward. He never stops. I mean, it's like in sparring, I sparred the way I fought. Like, you know, I was always constant pressure. I'd take shots, keep coming, take shots, keep coming, until I landed my shot. And he was like, I absolutely have to have you. Every round of this camp, it has to be my toughest sparring, has to be you. So I'm going to go through the first 3 guys, and then my last 2 rounds are going to be you, and I need you fresh. So, of course, you know, hearing that, I said, well, let's watch this guy. Let's see what he does. And I watched him, and sure enough, you know, it's like, he doesn't look for takedowns. He doesn't care. He's just going to walk forward. Perfect, man. I can mimic this guy all day long. So, Cub was training. We're 3.5 weeks out, and he screams in the second round, and he's like, "Oh hell!" Takes his glove off and picks up his hand. It's like a Mickey Mouse hand, and I was like, "Dang it, man!"
Yeah.
So Greg Jackson makes the call. He's like, calls Sean Shelby, and he tells him, "Man, Cub broke his hand." He's like, "Dang it, we're 3.5 weeks away." And then Greg says, "But I've got Leonard here." And Sean says, "Well, that was my very next question. Is Leonard there?" And they're like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Man, let's do it. Heck yeah. I think it'd be great." Wasn't in fight shape yet. Of course, I was just coming in to be a sparring round for a couple rounds. And then that day, a guy named Eric Davila takes me down and popped my knee that day. That day. So for a week, my knee was hyperextended. I was hitting pads with the brace on, just kind of standing there. They're like, "He's not going to take you down. If you can walk, you can fight this guy." And we did it, man. We just kept with it, and we got ready for the 3 weeks really hard, minus the knee injury. But it was great, man. It was fantastic. It was like, once I get out there, I'm not going to feel it at all. And we went, and that fight means so much to me because it meant a lot for both of us. I don't think there was a winner or a loser in that fight. He made his introduction to the States, and everybody loved him because he wouldn't stop coming, man.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
I'm not going to stop. So it was so great. And then afterwards, we ride to the ambulance together, and we walk in like that picture you got back there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I'm wheeling him in on a wheelchair. So
Man,
during the fight, I kicked his leg, and something happened to his knee. Of course, he never showed it during the fight, but afterwards he couldn't walk. And he had a chip in his elbow. And then, of course, I had a broken hand. We walk in, I remember wheeling him in, and the lady was like, "Oh my God, what happened? Did you guys have a car accident?" And they were like, "Yeah, they hit each other." The one guy that was, at the WC is like, "Yeah, they hit each other." And she was like, "What were you driving?" And they were like, "Nothing. They fought each other." And she was like, "What?" And then everybody there got tickled by it. They're like, "You guys fought each other and you're wheeling them in on a wheelchair? Are you guys friends?" We couldn't even speak the same language. But it was so cool, man. We had a translator. His translator was there. And, through his translator, we talked, for a good 30, 45 minutes while we were in the ambulance together. And then afterwards, we were talking about going to go eat together, everything else. And we started swelling up, and we're like, let's just go home.
That's so funny, man. And that win, there was a lot of people, there was a lot of controversy with that decision because, obviously a lot of people thought that he won that fight. And I don't know what social media was even at that point. I'm trying to think back to that year, like how even prevalent it was at that point. But like, did you hear a lot of that murmur? Did you hear a lot of that? Did it bother you? I mean,
it didn't, but it was kind of like, well, I don't know, and I'll run it back at any time. Then of course we got the opportunity, and he twisted me up. So,
yeah, of course.
It just, when you fight, you think about those things a little bit. It does bother you if you think, man, did he win? Did he lose? But I watch the fight over and over, and I'm thinking, it could have gone either way.
Absolutely.
I feel like the amount of control and the amount of push and the shots that we landed, it's like he dropped me, I dropped him. We had, a couple exchanges on the ground, and I was just like, I was happy to be part of a great fight. And at the end of the day, I say nobody lost,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's the perfect way to say it.
I'd have been okay with it. If they'd have called it a win for him, I'd have been okay with it. If they'd have called it a win for me, I'd have been okay with it. I'm lucky enough to say I've got a win over him, and he's got one over me.
And the trilogy's a bare knuckle fighting championship, right?
Yeah,
the trilogy fight.
That would be fantastic.
Could you imagine, bro? Oh my
I
God.
thought about that several times when I was signing to Bare Knuckle, and he reaches out to me still. We still talk through social media. I have a
Sure.
Korean translator. He has an English translator. So he sends me messages in English and I send him messages in Korean.
That's
Um,
funny.
and I mean, he's just such a great guy, man. But we have such a similar style that I think it'd make for a great fight, you know?
Yeah, and we'll get into BKFC. What a great show. The UFC run obviously did not go, the way you wanted it, man. An upside down record in the UFC. What do you feel like? What do you attribute that to? Was it the level of competition? Was it somewhere that you were at in your career? Like, what was the difference between when you were fighting at your prime in WEC to when you made that transition over?
So when I came in the UFC, I started dealing with a lot more wrestlers.
Yeah,
Mind you, when I got to Greg Jackson's, they asked me, "Have you ever wrestled before?" And I was like, I mean, I've had some street fights where we tussled a little bit. They're
yeah.
like, "No, no, 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 like wrestling." And I was like, like Hulk Hogan. And everybody walked away from me. They're like, "What the hell is this dude talking about?" And even in jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? The takedowns were leg trips, inside sweeps. They
Yeah,
weren't full on Greco-Roman or good ties.
shooting double legs. Yeah, yeah,
Shooting double, yeah, as singles, running the pipe, all those things. So I learned all that in the UFC, and I feel like my learning curve was a little late.
yeah.
And I hated it, man. I hated wrestling with a passion. I love submissions. I love submission wrestling. I hated the control part of wrestling. Like, okay, I can take a guy down,
Yeah.
hold him down, land some little bitty shots that don't hurt.
Yeah.
And see, me, I'm a dummy. If you hit me and it doesn't hurt, I think I'm winning.
Yeah.
So it's like you land 5 shots and I land one big one, I think I'm winning because I hurt you more with the 5 shots that you landed on me. Of course, when you're scoring something, nobody scores it that way. But in my brain, I'm still winning. So when a wrestler would take me down and land these small little shots, I was like, dude, get off me. Like, let's just stand up and fight. Um, and it took me so long to develop a defense and everything else. And I mean, you look at some of my fights, Matt Grice was a wrestler. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He didn't want to stand up. Of course, he would stand up with some people, but he told me I was not going to risk it with you at all.
Yeah.
I was gonna wrestle you the whole time, and a lot of guys took that mentality. Manny Gambier, of course, one time during our fight, I dropped my hands and I let him punch me, and I'm like, "All right, cool, let's go." And he's like, we ain't doing that."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it put me on my heels in the UFC. A lot of those guys had wrestling pedigrees, and I didn't.
Do you feel like if BKFC would have came around earlier, that would have been the easy transition for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the UFC. I love what I was able to do there. I love that they make you a household name. I love everything about it. I just hated the wrestling part aspect of it.
Sure. Yeah.
If BKFC had been around way earlier, I don't know that I would have ever had a UFC run.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you're saying. And still to this day, funny story, my wife became a massive Anthony Pettis fan at one point. This is before I got so deep into the business that now she doesn't even like the sport because it's our life. But she was a huge Pettis fan. And when he fought Guida, oh my God, she hates Clay Guida's guts to this day. You mentioned Clay Guida and she's like, God, that wrestling mother. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I remember it like it was yesterday. So I totally know what you're saying. It's still to this day. I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow and it's hard to watch. And there's some guys that are so good at it. They've made whole careers out of it still to this day. And, the rules have changed a little bit. You get the right ref, maybe it'll change up. But for the most part, it's still a thing that still happens to this
It's
day.
still dominant. Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't get reward. A lot of guys don't get rewarded with good fights unless they become a champion and the UFC has to put them in the limelight. But as soon as they start to lose, like a guy like John Fitch, they're gone. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's why guys have become more exciting. That's why Khabib, he became more exciting. He started putting people away. You know what I mean? Whereas for a long time, he could just control you. He became more of a vicious guy, and it really helped his career. So, you know, I think guys are kind of learning like, hey, if I want the payday, if I want the big spot on the card, I'm going to have to start finishing people.
Yeah, I've got to turn to a complete fighter, not just a wrestler. That's right.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And talking about Khabib, I mean, that dude is something else, man.
Yeah, no, he is. And just getting to be around him with Eagle FC, you know, he's my boss. He's just his aura that he carries, man, and just gets things done and just so certain. And it's pretty cool to be around him, but he's actually a pretty funny guy too, which is crazy.
Absolutely, man. I love Khabib.
So you go to LFA, do some work there, pick up a title, which is dope. Was it just kind of that sour taste in your mouth from the UFC that you kind of had to do something and had to get back into it and end on a better note?
So the story was the UFC, Sean Shelby tells me, go to Legacy, win the title, we'll bring you right back.
Sure.
I go to Legacy, I win the title. They fly me out to the fight in Chicago where Cowboy fought. And they're like, you know, at the time, McGregor was there. Sure. Aldo was still there. Cub Swanson was on a run. Chad Mendez was doing well. They had 5 great guys.
Yeah.
They were kind of like, yeah, you know, you're a little older now. How about you do some commentating or, you know, something in that aspect? And I was like, I was a fighter, you know, it wasn't a commentator. I didn't want to switch levels and go into that. So I was like, yeah, no. So I lost. I had a bad taste in my mouth. Had some issues with the IRS during that time as well. And after I won that title, I was kind of done with MMA, man.
Yeah.
I really, really was looking for just like, okay, cool. I got to switch gears and jump into something new. And, you know, I took 2 last fights, you know, the title defense against, and I feel bad for Damian Jackson because he made a name off winning against me, but he fought a very untrained Leonard Garcia.
Sure.
He was a phenomenal guy, but, you know, his UFC career that came from that win didn't go well, but because he wasn't ready for that level of fighting yet. But he made a name off, you know, getting a finish on me, which the only times I had been finished in the UFC was Mike Brown and the Korean Zombie, you know, so it was like a big deal if you finished me. And when that happened for him, I feel like it catapulted him and it shot him right to where, you know, like, hey man, these are deep waters and it's hard to swim here. Yeah. And he learned real fast. But yeah, I was just ready to go out and then you know, started money career in out here in West Texas in the oil field. Automation X was a huge sponsor of mine, and they brought me on, and that's what I started doing for a living. And then I got that bare knuckle call.
Yeah, you know, bare knuckle is it's a wild organization. I've been with them since the beginning of the year at Knuckle Mania, and I just love everything about the show. If you want to know the honest truth, man, I love the way it looks, the way it sounds. I love the fights. They seem to treat their fighters pretty well. There's pretty good money for the fighters, which is good. I love to hear that. And it's raw, you know, and it's new and it's edgy. But what was it, I mean, about that, you know, about that promotion and David Feldman and the whole crew there that said, okay, this is where I need to be?
So Feldman gives me a call. Of course, I'd been out of fighting for 3 years. He just calls me, you know, in one evening, and I'm sitting there and I answer the phone and I was like, you know, this is a weird number. So I answered it and he was like, hey, this is Dave Feldman, bare knuckle fighting championship. And I was like, holy crap. Bare knuckle was the the purest form of combat. And when I seen Lopez and what's the other heavyweight? Beltron.
Yeah.
I seen their fight, and he sends me a clip of that fight, and he's like, "Hey, what do you think?" So he's like, I got a fight card coming up in Cancun. I want you to fight Julian Lane, and I was like, "Oh man, that'd be a great fight for me."
Yeah.
But I got to talk my wife into it, and he's like, "Hey man, it's in Cancun." So I reach out to my wife. I was like, "You want to go on vacation?" And she's, of course, 7 months pregnant at the time. She's like, "Well, after I have the baby," and I was like, "No, a little bit before."
I
And
can
she's
imagine
like,
this conversation.
"Yeah." She's like, "Where at?" And I was like, "Let's go to Cancun." And she was like, "Cancun," and then I was like, "Yeah, here's the kicker." Um,
By the way, yeah.
yeah, it's a paid gig, and she was like, "What do you mean a paid gig? Like with work?" And I was like, "Kind of." Um, it's a fight, and she was like, "Nope, no, 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 what kind of fight? Like an MMA fight?" And I was like, "No, no, no, it's boxing." And she's like, "Boxing? Well, I was like, "Yeah, but there's no gloves." And she was like, "Well," hung up on me. Then she called me back. She's like, quit messing around, quit playing." And I was like, "No, I'm serious. It's bare knuckle." I sent her the video of Tony Lopez. And I was like, "Look, man, I've always wanted to continue to compete. We had this talk." So she's like, "Let's pray. Let's pray about it. Let's go to church on Sunday and let's figure this out." So we get together and we talk about it. The money was right. The venue was good. We're about to have a baby, so it would work out just fine. And I made a deal with her that night. After church, I was like, "Look, I'll sign this 3-fight deal. I just want to try to go out there and be the best. There's no wrestling, no kicking. It's all punching. And as long as my hands hold up, I think we're gonna be good." She's like, "I'm not worried about your hands. I'm worried about your head."
Yeah.
And
course.
and I explained to her how much safer it is than boxing, because in boxing they tape your hands up. And I said, "Look, punch me in the head and see how much your hand hurts." And she laughed. And she agrees to it, but she only agrees to 3 fights.
Okay.
And that was kind of my deal with her, with my boss at work, and with God. We kind of said it. And I think it all came together really well. So my deal with God was like, allow me to go out here and compete, allow me to try to be the best guy in this organization, and I'll retire, even
Yeah.
if I'm considered the best. And that was a tough one, because I beat Joe Elmore in the last fight, and he was ranked #1. But this is where God intervening showed me that it was the right thing. So I go out there and I beat Julian Lane the first time,
Yep.
and win the Latin American title. Then they talked me into a tournament at 155, which I had told my wife I wasn't going to cut weight anymore. I'd just fight at what I walked around at, and that would be the deal. But then I cut weight to make 155.
Yeah.
And it was like a greed thing. I wanted to fight, it was a 4-man tournament. So I was like, these are my last 2 fights. If I beat Jason Knight, I'll fight Artemo about probably in the finals. Then I'll retire at #3 and I'll be the champion. And of course, I went in there and got a replacement, Jim Ehlers, which is a phenomenal fighter. And I knew nothing about Jim. Absolutely didn't even know he had fought in the UFC. I watched a 20-second video of him knocking out Brito, and I was like, this guy's a grappler. He just got lucky, landed that uppercut. It's going to be an easy fight. Whatever. I went in there, and boy, did I learn.
Yeah.
That you can't get off your butt and train for 3 weeks, and I couldn't do that anymore. I wasn't a young man, and he came out and he caught me with a really good shot right in the eyeball in the very first punch of the fight, and he put a whooping on me, man, and it needed to happen. So this is where God comes in. and this is my explanation for it.
Sure.
I'm sitting at home. I'm not getting any calls about an upcoming fight, nothing. And I'm watching BKFC, you know, I'm kind of paying attention. And Joe Elmore comes out and he fights I can't remember what that tall guy's name is.
I knocked him out though.
WC as well. Anyways, Joe obliterates this dude, and he's screaming, yelling. He's all pumped up, looking into the camera.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was staring right at me, you know. And I was like, "Holy crap! Look at this scary dude, 165." Just comes forward. He has a big punch. Wow. I wonder, you know, what's he gonna do next? So then he fights Tom Show in the next fight, and I see some things in that fight that I'm like, oh, okay. But I know you can't get hit by this guy because, you know, every time he would hit Tom would go down. So I'm watching. I'm still not getting any calls, and then they interview him after the fight, and the very first name that pops out of his mouth is mine.
Here we go.
And he's ranked #1. And I'm like, all right, God, I see the opportunity here. I know I got to keep doing this work. I'm going to get it done. And that's who I'm going to fight. I knew I was going to retire after that fight. I didn't share that information with anybody. I didn't tell Dave Feldman. I didn't tell anybody because I wanted to see what direction they were wanting to go afterwards. And I felt like, I don't know, but I felt like they thought Joe was going to beat me.
Yeah.
I never, you know, they never talked about a contract extension. They never talked about any of that. And you know as well as I know, when you're a fighter, if they think you're going to win, they're already gearing up for the next step.
Of course. Yeah.
And since I didn't get that call, since I didn't get that notification that they really expected me to continue, I kind of felt like, man, they think I'm gonna lose this fight. WC days came back. That chip started growing on the shoulder, and I was like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna fight fire with fire. I'm just gonna go straight. I'm gonna walk straight through this guy. So I trained like a madman, man. I had that chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove. I had an opportunity to be ranked #1 in the world at 165, and I was like, all right, God, you know, here we go, man. So I took it seriously. I did everything I had to do, and I went in there, and I think I won every round. I think the judges gave him 1 round, but I don't know how they gave him a round.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, man. And to have that conviction is serious, right? And we just saw it, you know, to bring up Khabib again. He has that same conviction, right? He's like, listen, you know, this is it. You know, his dad passes away. You know, he makes a deal with his mom, and that's it. And there's people that say, well, I think he'll come back. It's like, no, he's not. I mean, he's convicted 100%. This is the deal he has made. Do you feel that exact same way? Like you have that conviction, like there's nothing that could pull me out of this.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of that's where I'm at. You know, I had an opportunity come up. It was really good money against Chad Mendes, and I think me and Chad Mendes would make a phenomenal fight. We sparred against each other. We're great friends. But like I said, WC days, you know what I mean? You look at a guy like Chad Mendes and you're like, hey, that's a guy that's in the way. I had that opportunity to fight him. It was really good money. And my wife sat down across from me at the table and she was like, listen, you made a deal with me. You made a deal with work, but you know, first and foremost, the biggest deal you made was with God.
Yep.
She said, can money sway you? Can that be, you know, bring that on you? And she's like, if you do this, you're on your own, you know, you're going to kind of have to do this one on your own. You're like, we'll support you because we're your family, but you know, the spiritual backing's not going to be there. And I'm sure you'll do well. You can compete with anybody in the world, but do you want to compete without that, you know, without that backing? And man, you know, it took me into the room and had lots of good prayers, and I did my talk and just called Nate back and said, yeah, I'm not interested, man. I'm not going to do it. So like you said, I think Khabib's conviction was I don't know if he wrestles with it in his head the way I did. I think he's just point blank no. And it took me a few days to say no. So
Sure.
you know, it was definitely that same conviction though. At the end of the day, it made me choose not to get out there again.
Wow. Yeah, man. I can imagine that that's quite the feeling, man, to turn that fight down. But probably the right call. One last thing, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about this guy, a guy that just laid his gloves down in the middle of the octagon. Your guy Cowboy, Donald Cerrone. I'd love to know when you guys really started vibing. When did you meet? Like, when did this friendship begin?
So me and Cowboy knew each other for a very long time. We you know when he first his first kickboxing trainer was Dwayne Ludwig.
Yep.
Dwayne Ludwig married my cousin Jessica. So me and Dwayne have been we're cousins.
Yeah.
And you know, I met Dwayne back when I was in the Texas regional circuit. You know, my cousin was like, "Hey, my cousin fights. My boyfriend at the time fights. You guys got to meet." And of course, Dwayne was this big, huge name in kickboxing, and he had a phenomenal style. And me and Dwayne hit it off. I mean, the first second we ran into each other, it was like smiles, hugs, everything. Have that same positive energy. He loves to stand and fight. I love to stand and fight. He's a lot better at it than I am, but it was so cool. We would spar with each other, and man, it was phenomenal, man. It was like it was something else. It always felt like you were learning so much when you sparred with Dwayne.
Yeah.
And Dwayne was Cowboy's first kickboxing coach. So me and Cowboy met in that setting. And then when MMA started becoming a thing, we ended up at Grudge training a couple times. It was called TSKO. Trevor Whitman had a gym called TSKO back then. Yep. Me and Dwayne are there, and we're getting ready for one of the fights. And I was supposed to fight, I think, Spencer Fisher in 2006. Okay. So I go down there to Colorado to train. Cowboy's there, and me and Cowboy are phenomenal training partners. Like, man, same thing. Like, he likes same things I like. We're just great friends. Everybody would tell me that guy's trouble, stay away from him. But I'm sure if he would have come to Texas, they would have said, "Hey, that guy's trouble, stay away from him." So it really worked out, man. And I go to Greg Jackson's to start getting ready, and they had a couple of lightweights there, Damasio Page, and a couple other guys. They're like, "Hey, man, is there anybody that you could call that would help you like exponentially in these next 3 weeks?" And I was like, "I know a guy." So I call Cowboy up, and he answers the phone, and he's like, "Leonard, what's up?" And he's hammering nails. He's on a roof, and he's got this air compressor, and he's hammering nails in. He's like, "Hold on, two. What's up, man?" And I was like, "Nothing, man. What are you doing?" He was like, "I'm roofing." I said, "Oh, man, well, you know." He was like, "Well, what's going on? Why are you calling?" And I was like, "Man, I got into UFC." And he was like, "Oh, wow, you know, great." I said, "Man, I need you to help me." And he was like, "Help you train for it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Albuquerque." And you know, we paused for a little bit, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "I'm looking for a flight." And I was like,
like
"Yeah."
that.
And
like
that. So check this out. He owns a roofing company that's doing these roofs. He jumps off that roof, flies to Albuquerque, calls the guys back, tells them, "Finish the roofing job, take over the company, do whatever you want. I'm coming here. I'm going to be here for like a month. I'm going to help this guy out, and we'll see what happens." So kind of a leap of faith for him.
No doubt.
Just to jump off that roof and say, "Hey, I'm going to be part of this guy's camp. I'm going to figure it out." I never offered him money, never offered him anything, you know, just kind of told him, "Hey, man, can you help me?" And he never expected anything. So it was kind of cool. Comes down, helps me out. I get to UFC. I have a phenomenal fight with Roger, and they're like, God dang it, Greg talks about you like crazy. And I was like, well, he's talking about me, but the guy he should really be talking about is this guy over here on the left of me with the cowboy hat on. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, he was the reason I was able to get here and do everything that I was doing, because pushed me every day, like, stretched everything, made me continue to keep going. And they're like, can he fight? And I was like, yeah, he's pretty, very decent fighter. And of course, he was 29-0 as a kickboxer, undefeated in MMA. I think he was 6-1 at the time. So the WC started looking at him and then signed him shortly after that. And that was it, man. We just kind of made that run together. And in the beginning, of course, people would hand him the camera to take a picture of me and them. And I'm like, man, these people have no idea how great this guy is. Like, I should be taking a picture of you guys, because he's going to be a star. And I was grateful that it happened for him.
Yeah. No, I mean, what an incredible career. And obviously, the thing about his career is because he was always down to fight. Like he's always stepped up, wanted to fight. I mean, I don't know. He probably fought 5 times in a year, I'd say at one point, I would say, or close to that.
7 times.
7 times in a year. I mean, it's really unprecedented, the way he would step up. And obviously the UFC certainly appreciated that in many, many ways. What is it about his character? What is it about him that just makes him such a consummate professional, makes him such a great fighter that, in my opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame without a doubt?
Absolutely. So Cowboy is the guy. Say me and you come up with this sport, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knows the rules. Nobody understands anything of it. And me and you are the best 2 at it because we created it. We could sit down with Cowboy for 5 minutes and teach him the rules, and he would beat us both after about 10 minutes. He's just that guy. He speaks his mind. He lives differently than anybody else I know. What he feels is what he's going to do. What he wants to say is what he's going to say. And I've always respected that about him. The greatest thing about Cowboy is he'll give you the shirt off his back, even if it's his last shirt.
Yeah.
Like I said, he jumped off that roof and came running. Had no idea what the money, if there was going to be money. He had no idea if there was going to be a career afterwards. He just jumped off the roof and hang. Yeah. And, it was like, for him, he said, I don't know why I did that. I just did it. And, I think everybody has certain callings on their life, and he knows how to answer that call.
What's your favorite Donald Cerrone fight?
Rob McCullough. So
Rob.
Him and Rob got it on, man. And it was so hard for me because I had to fight Pulver shortly after that. And I was so emotional during that fight because, they went at it. Like, Rob McCullough was Rob McCullough. You know what I mean? At that point in time, he was like, everybody knew who Rob was, and you weren't walking through him, and Cowboy definitely didn't walk through him, but holy crap, what a fight.
Did you guys ever make obviously a lot of guys would never fight. And you hear that a lot. He's my teammate, I'm never going to fight him. Did you guys make a pact at that point? Was there ever
we would have fought each other.
That's what I could see that. Like you two, your personalities, like I could see that it'd be all business. You go in there and do the damn thing, right?
Yeah. We would have definitely the couple times we had some training sessions that were fights. And we always talked about it, and we would laugh. But of course, we put a big price tag on it. We're like, yeah, for $1 million, I'd fight you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And in a professional setting, would we have done it? Absolutely. If they would have called and said, Cowboy, you got to fight Leonard, he'd say, Leonard, don't come into my room until we fight, because I don't want to see you. At the time we were roommates. We were in the little bunkhouse, so he was on the top bunk and I was on the bottom. I was like, what would we do if we had to fight each other now? And he was like, you would just sleep at separate times.
Well, tell me about the BMF Ranch. Tell me about the ranch, man, because it's
So
pretty iconic, you know, for MMA fans, for in the community. The BMF Ranch is a big deal. How'd that all come about?
it started out as a tap out ranch because, you know, of course, tap out was a big thing in the beginning. And me and Cowboy actually got sued for that.
Okay.
We were renting a home in Albuquerque, and we started the tap out ranch where fighters would come and, dude, they would pay us $250 to come. We'd basically take 100 of that, give it to Greg Jackson for that month. 150 of it was to help us with the utilities.
Yeah.
And our landlord at the time, who we did everything for, we helped her sell her home. We got her children signed stuff by baseball stars, football stars. They would come to our house to watch the fights. She sued us because she said we were subleasing her property. And actually got some money from us. So it was an odd deal, but that's where the idea came from. We wanted to start a place where a fighter didn't have to pay thousands of dollars, you know,
Sure.
just pay a couple $100, get in there. But we wanted guys who had grit, who wanted to do something, who maybe didn't have the funds, but had the ability, and we wanted to help. And when our careers took off, we kind of used our money to build that place. And man, that's what it is today. It's a place where guys can go who don't have the funds to be there, who don't have the resources to have all the equipment that's there. And like I said, that's a guy who'll give you a shirt off his back, everything in there. I mean, I think he's going to get an oxygen chamber in there pretty soon. You know, those things are expensive. And he's probably going to have like 10 or 15 guys, you know, trying to cram in there at a time. And it's only one person at a time, but he'll figure out a way to let 2 or 3 guys get in it.
Who's some guys that are kind of prevalent now that have kind of come through the ranch?
So Chris McCrae.
Yeah, I remember Chris.
Oak, a lot of guys made it to the UFC from the ranch. I can't remember who the other man, it's been so long. I just remember Chris and Noak because I talk to them all the time.
Yeah.
Just several guys that
still going to this day, and still
absolutely
going.
Still going. You know, he finds training partners all the time, brings them to the ranch, and they just become, you know, guys that live at the ranch.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, man, you know, what an amazing career. Was it emotional seeing it finally happen? I mean, were you there at the fight?
No, so the fight before was Joe Lazone.
Of course.
And we were scheduled to go to the fight in Vegas when he was going to fight Joe the first time, and then he calls us, tells us he's got food poisoning, so we didn't make the flight because the fight wasn't going to happen. During that time, my wife had gotten a concert tickets in Ruidoso, New Mexico.
Okay.
And then he calls us and says, "Hey, I'm fighting on this night." It was the same night of the concert. And I was like, "Dang it, Cowboy, we're not going to be able to make it to the fight." So the Sunday coming into fight week, he calls me. I'd just gotten out of church, and he was like, "Are you at church?" And I was like, "No, I'm at a restaurant eating." He was like, "Can you be home in like 45 minutes?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I got a package coming for you." So I was like, "All right, cool." So we're sitting here at the house waiting on this package to get here. And he texts me, he's like, "Is the package there yet?" And I was like, "No, not yet." And I hear a knock on my door. I was like, "Oh, hell, that was great timing, man. I think it's here." I open at the door, and it's Cowboy. And he's like, "Yeah, you guys are coming to the fight. You're not going to a Ja Rule and Ashanti concert." You know,
is that what it was? Ja Rule and Ashanti?
That's what it was, man. So
that's so crazy.
But so I'll tell you what I seen that made me realize that it was coming to an end. We're sitting in there and we're having a conversation, we're talking, and he's like, "Hey, go get my iPad." So the guy Saucer, he's with him, it's one of the training partners. He runs out and he gets the iPad and he's like, "Hey, let's watch this movie premiere with me and Gina. It doesn't come out till Tuesday, but I got the copy of it right here. Let's watch it," you know. And I could see the excitement in his face. And if you know Cowboy, on fight week, everything was about fight week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, there was going to be some crazy activities, you know, maybe some skydiving, maybe some wakeboarding, but it was about fight week. And his attention wasn't on fight week, it was on that movie premiere.
Wow.
So it was exciting to watch him. He was like nervous, like in the movie. He cries, and he talks about what emotional state he had to get into for that to happen. So you could see him alive again, and it was really cool, man. So we're here at the house. We're watching him fight Jim Miller. I thought he was gonna run through Jim.
Yeah.
And then
and Jim just don't go away, dude.
Never.
I mean, dude, it's amazing.
Never, man. And it's like when he got caught, I could see his arm was trapped, and I was like, dang it, he's caught. Is he gonna get out? Is he gonna get out? I see him tap. But then he taps and he gets up with a smile on his face. And I was like, that's it. And my wife was like, what? No, I don't think he'll go out on a loss. So the UFC will give him another fight. And and then I walk, kind of walk away. I was upset that he lost, and I'm like, dang it, man. Walk back, and he's putting his gloves down in the middle of the thing. So it was like, it was an emotional moment for me. I was like, dang it. You hate to see a guy like Cowboy stop fighting, but I'm grateful that he has something that's going to turn his life into. He's still going to be Cowboy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, without a doubt. What a career, incredible career. And I'm excited to see how the movie thing goes, man. If it's anything like what he's done with everything else, then he's going to rock it. No doubt about it.
You create anything for that guy, and he's going to be a rock star at it.
No doubt about it. I can see a little commentary in his view. I can see a little bit of everything with that guy. So I'm excited to see what it is going forward, man. Well, this has been awesome, man. It's been great talking to you. And there's obviously more we can get into, but then that'll just leave it wide open for another podcast, and we'll do this thing again, man. Is there anything that you got going on? Are you pretty prevalent on social media? Like, is anything going on that people can kind of connect with you on, or anything like that as far as the social media?
Yeah, at Bad Boy Garcia, pretty much on everything. Facebook, TikTok. My wife is actually a social media influencer on TikTok. We do lives with her all the time, and we do Q&As, stuff like that. We actually did one last night. It was kind of cool. Social media is a crazy thing, right? It's one of those things that allows us to reach out and connect with people. So it's great. So pretty much at Bad Boy Garcia on everything, on Leonard Bad Boy Garcia on Facebook, Leonard Bad Boy Garcia on TikTok. I think it's just Bad Boy Garcia on Instagram. But man, I'd like to take time to thank you for doing this podcast. And it's a great show. Also, if you're in Texas, you need automation parts, come see me at Automation X. That's kind of my thing now. And then of course, last but not least, man, thank God for allowing us to do what we do, man. And it's just one of those things, and it's great. I love life, and I'm glad I'm still able to speak correctly after all those punches to the head. And
me too.
I'm glad I'm not getting punched anymore.
No doubt. Are we going to see you in Albuquerque with BKFC? You going to make it out
absolutely.
there?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a guy on the card, Jeremy Salceda. He's fighting on the card. Of course, I'm a huge Tom Show fan. I'll follow that guy wherever he goes as well. And now that Cowboys kind of had MMA, I'm going to focus more on the bare knuckle guys.
No doubt about it, man. Well, Leonard, appreciate it, man. We will see you down the road, and keep in touch, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you, sir.
There it is. That's Leonard Bad Boy Garcia. Awesome interview. A lot of stuff still coming up this season on In This Corner. Find us on all of our social media. I'm Cyrus Fees. We'll see you next time right here on In This Corner.